Cloud. Hello, I'm Sally Hanley, and this is Mystery Book Club. And today we're discussing A Christmas Party, a classic locked door mystery by Georgette. Okay. I did a little background checking. This book was published in 1941, and she wrote from the 1920s to the 1970s, about the same time that Agatha Christie was writing.
Oh,
And I was actually surprised to find out this is the second book in her Inspector Hemingway series. I only thought of her as a romance writer. I never thought of her as a mystery writer at all. And uh, because we read A Halloween Party by Christie, I wasn't even thinking about the comparison at the time, but now I thought this gives us a lot of rich information to discuss. And the first question I want to ask you is, how does this book in your mind compare to Halloween Party or any of Christie's other novels that you may have read? And how does she compare stylistically, in your opinion?
I like the humor in Higher.
She's
She makes
funny.
me laugh a lot. And
She's
her mysteries are wonderful. I think I've read all of them. This was the first one I had not read, but they're wonderful and they are funny.
Yeah. I found myself laughing out loud several times. And that is when I realized, because we mentioned this when we read Halloween Party, that Christie's books are really quite dark.
Mhm.
You know, we had the murder of two children in a Halloween Party, and really the murderers were really creepy people, right? They were spooky in a little, like, the guy who wanted to create that beautiful island,
Mhm.
and he was quite a strange character. So are any of you watching the Agatha Christie series, Lucy Worsley series on PBS?
No. Not yet, but I
Okay.
will.
Well, I know that last week they played episode 1 again before they did episode 2, and this Sunday it'll be episode 3. They probably play them again on, I think, Tuesday nights. I'm not sure.
Well, they're on podcast.
Oh,
You
that's
watch
right.
them that I watch them that way.
Oh, okay. So you can watch them whenever you feel like it. Well, I've been
Well, they only have them on for maybe 3 weeks after they show.
okay.
So you have to be
Oh, you
thinking.
have a time limit. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
Sorry.
very interesting. I mean, her life, you could see she didn't have it's interesting because in the episode, in the interviews, they remarked that Agatha says she had a happy childhood, which she did until her father died, and then kind of they didn't have money anymore, and it's interesting. But I did find the stories are funny, but the plot is really tightly woven, right?
Yeah.
It's as tightly woven as any Agatha Christie one. Um,
For me, if I may interrupt, for
sure.
me, A Christmas Party compared to Agatha Christie's um, was, for me, too long and too repetitive. I
Oh,
mean, we learn about everything, and then when the inspectors change, again, the whole thing much more in a summary than. But what for? We understand. I had the feeling that the author didn't. Why does she do that? Does she think we're dumb and we need all these repetitions?
I agree with you. When the inspector, or the head, actually the detective reporter, whoever the detective reported to, then was the one who talked to Inspector Hemingway. And
Yeah.
you're right. I reflected on. I thought exactly the same thing. I thought, he is Cindy, who is a critique partner of mine. Well, I'm sure you haven't really read this whole book yet, but
I'm waiting for it at the library, and
yeah,
I am
you're
looking
gonna
forward
know
to it because
exactly
I
what we
like
mean.
her.
Because
But
Cindy always says to me, "We already know this. You're repeating this. You don't have to do that." You know, like when another character say recounting something that you already know.
And
So
you know,
go ahead.
and I think Agatha Christie is more to the point, to the point.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, but by page 130, I know who the killer was. I
Did you
thought,
really?
yes, this character Joseph was too good to be true, and I started suspecting him. Plus, it was obvious that everybody, uh, Stevie, and I thought, nah, he's not going to be the one because the author is distracting us. And I read it all, but I
You
thought,
knew. That's interesting. How about you, Ellis?
I did not know it was him
Me
until late,
too.
late. I thought other people. I never suspected Stephen, but there were others, including the wife that was so quiet, but they kept saying how intelligent she was,
yeah.
Uh-huh.
suspecting.
I have to tell you, I don't know who I was talking to about the book when I first started reading it. And I said, you don't really like any of these characters. But then I thought, but I like Matilda. And at that moment, I thought, it's Matilda. Exactly. I thought it's got to be her because also what I remembered was that well, and that's what the inspector says at the end. If there's somebody who's got an alibi, an airtight alibi, that's the person you need to look at. She and Joseph were alibying for each other, right? They were talking to each other through the door. But she said, oh, he probably didn't even notice those 10 minutes when she wasn't listening to him at all. She couldn't hear him because, I don't know, she was running the water or whatever. And so I thought, and the more I read the book, the more I liked her, and the more I thought, oh, I'm going to be so upset when it turns out to be her. So I was fooled completely right to the end.
My favorite character was Matilda too. I mean, the one I warm up to. But Joseph didn't have any money. This is why he's living with his wife at the house of his brother, with his brother, and he was too good. And
Yeah.
nobody speaks so well of so many people. And I thought, this guy, there's something wrong with him.
No, I thought he was just an annoying character because,
So did I.
people
Really
like this, right?
annoying. And I thought he was a distraction, but from the real killers.
Yeah.
I never thought it was Stephen, but I certainly went through the guy that was not the business partner.
Right.
Can't think of
Monty
his
Spot.
name.
Monty
I thought,
Sport.
oh, he would be nice. But the wife that was just so silent, I thought she could have done it because she's going to lose her home and everything.
Right.
If the person who does take the house doesn't let her stay.
Right.
so I haven't read this, but it sounds like it really was a very good, other than Yolanda figuring it out. But even so, it sounds like it was a really good, solid mystery. But my question is more, I have a general question. Like, I write mysteries, and when I do, I try to put in the red herrings and make it not obvious so everybody's guessing. But when you read mysteries, when I read mysteries, I'm reading for a lot of stuff other than to figure it out. Like I like to read for the characters and the setting and the humor. And
yeah, this is why
if it's a good book, I really, at the end, I don't really care. Like Janet Ivanovich, for instance, I could care less about who she's pursuing and why. I'm reading it because I want to laugh at her all the silly stuff that Stephanie Plum does. So when you all read mysteries, is the mystery the most important part to you, or is it other
No,
things that
no,
you're
but I thought that in this book it really popped out.
Mm-hmm.
And since I like the book very much, I kept reading. It's not,
Yeah.
I think it's this, let's go to the end and see if it's Joseph. But I kept reading. I kept reading because maybe I could be wrong. And it's not only the mysteries. I like a lot the atmosphere.
Yeah. That's what I read for a lot.
I like the atmosphere, and I like if there is a development of characters. The characters develop, they don't stay so rigid, and I think this book shows us.
And I think I'm looking forward to reading it because Sally and y'all have said it's funny, and I love funny. And also, it sounds like just a great setting. So hopefully the library will have it, and I'll be able to read it actually over Christmas. And it sounds like it will be just perfect. You know.
Perfect.
But I also like settings.
I mean,
Incidentally, I get them often if there's something I don't really want to have from thrift books or from eBay. I think this one was $3.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Thank you. I'll look at like that. Yeah, because even the ebook was something like $7 or $8.99. And I'm sorry, I'm cheap.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to buy them.
Thrift books. Okay. I'll look.
Or eBay. I think this one came from eBay.
Okay.
Interesting. I would never even think to look there. So that's a good tip for future purchases when you can't get it in the library. That's when I'll definitely buy it. But I buy the Kindle version because I just prefer to read on Kindle. You know, the one of the things that keeps you reading, even if you feel like you have it figured out, is that you don't have it figured out how it happened, which is what the inspector is challenged with. This is a locked room, and only two people have an alibi, and every character has a reason to want to kill this man. Let's talk about these characters a little bit more, because I found there's another thing, like in modern, this would never get published today the way that it is, exactly for what you pointed out, Yolanda. They would have cut that whole scene out with the inspector relaying. It would have been like, after the inspector got the lowdown from the detective, this is what happened. That you would never would have had that whole section where he described the whole thing all over again. But now, so Nathaniel, here's the other thing. The body doesn't drop to like what, page 99?
Yeah.
And again, everybody goes, you gotta have the body drop right away. Okay, so number one, the body doesn't drop for a long time. So you really aren't entirely sure who's going to get killed. You know,
I had candidates, but unfortunately.
Which were your candidate?
Well, I thought the business partner was such a jerk. It could have been him. And I also thought I can understand if they kill the dumb girl.
Oh,
Valerie.
If somebody strangled her, I would have believed it.
Mama, you didn't reckon.
She was like,
I mean, the author did a real good job with this character because I despise her all through the book.
Exactly.
Oh gosh.
Like, I thought it would have been justifiable homicide, but
yeah. I highlighted some passages, and like this one, when she arrives, I think it's Matilda says to her, would you like to go up to your room now, Valerie, or have tea first? Miss Dean, whose major occupation in life was the possibility of her hair becoming disarranged, chose to go to her room. So like, this is it. I mean, that summed her up so perfectly. And again, I know that in today's, writers are always cautioned, show don't tell, but I loved the telling. I loved when the author gave us her opinion of these characters, although it does show as well as tell. And then the interesting thing is Valerie hated Matilda because Matilda didn't care so much about her looks. I mean, she always was dressed impeccably according to the description of her, but she wasn't a girly girl, and
she wasn't pretty.
Yeah.
So she wasn't worth considering.
Right. She couldn't see what men saw in her, in spite of the, like the fact that she was intelligent, could carry on a conversation and discuss things. Oh, and then another favorite quote of mine about Valerie is when at the very end, when they're arguing back and forth, I think this is after the engagement falls apart, and she goes, I very nearly went to college, and I should have, only that it seemed the most frightful waste of time.
I know. I was like, how dumb can she be? She's
You need
dumb
to know
and
about her.
Wasteful.
But poor Nathaniel, he's like a little bit of a Scrooge, right?
Mhm.
But my favorite is, like, this is on page 5. In his opinion, a real English Christmas meant, in his experience, a series of quarrels between inimical persons bound to one another only by the accident of relationship and thrown together by a worn-out convention which decreed that Christmas families should foregather, which is a great word, foregather. I never would have thought to use that word. But yeah, I mean, he hates this whole thing, right? And in his house, he's
But
being
yet he is fairly generous. He's letting his
Yeah.
brother and wife live there. He really does take care of them, and he likes to argue.
Yes,
So he enjoys Stephen. I could see
exactly. And Paula too.
that. Yeah.
I mean, they argue like quite openly and unabashedly. So that's kind of interesting. Now, Uncle Joseph, the peacemaker, he views himself as the peacemaker in the family, right? And he's the one who's the kindly uncle. And Matilda, see, there's a point in the book where Matilda is describing all the other characters, right? And her assessment is he was like a clumsy, well-meaning Saint Bernard puppy dropped amongst a set of people who were not fond of dogs.
That was a good line.
Yeah. And he says things like, they all look to me. And he's like totally unself-aware of how everyone else views him, which is telling. Stephen is the heir apparent. And actually, I think his uncle probably likes him because he's just like his uncle, right? Is the uncle Nathaniel.
Yeah, they both have the same type of personality. Yeah, quarrel, argue to no end.
But they're not sniveling
No.
characters like Joseph is, right?
Yeah.
Right.
No.
That's it. That's kind of interesting when you think about it. And he does clearly. Stephen is his favorite, even though he doesn't show any kind of affection or much affection at all. But they seem to have moments during the whole Christmas Eve thing where they're at least civil and enjoying a conversation with one another, right? Now, Maud, this is again Matilda's assessment. Her idea of human bliss seemed to consist of eating, sleeping, playing interminable games of patience, which I assume is like a card game or something.
Solitaire.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I looked it up.
Oh,
You're
interesting.
right. You're right.
Interesting. And reading in a desultory fashion, chatty biographies of royal personages or other celebrities, right? And boy, does that sum her up. And she's just loving this book. And wasn't that this little subplot of her book disappearing?
Yeah.
You just knew it had to have.
I knew there was something, but I couldn't imagine what it was.
At first, it didn't seem important, but then as it kept coming up over and over again, you go, what role does it have, right? And
I couldn't imagine what.
Yeah. Heyer is superb at working that in, and it was a really important detail in the end, right? And then Matilda Clare, nearer 30 than 20, she enjoyed private means, lived in a cottage not uncomfortably far from London, and eked out her income by occasional journalism and the breeding of bull terriers, right? And again, like, in just those couple of sentences, you got this character. Valerie, we talked about, and what did you think of Willoughby the playwright? Did you ever suspect him?
No.
I didn't think he was smart enough or there long enough. He didn't know him well enough.
Yeah, and he didn't seem to. What was the advantage to him? well, the advantage if he killed, then Paula
Paula,
would
no?
get her inheritance, and then he would get the money to back his play.
Right.
But he seemed to be, yeah. And again, this was you really get the best description of the other characters when they interact with Matilda, because he says to her, they're afraid of it, his play. They say it hasn't got box office appeal, but I know it is a good play. That is like how many of us writers go, I know my book is good. And then when Matilda suggested he write others plays with the desired box office appeal, he said he would rather starve to death than write any sort of play, write the sort of play she meant, right?
Mhm.
So that's kind of that was kind of interesting.
Writers like that, if they can't write their esoteric stuff, they would never write a commercial book.
Right,
Never.
right. Yeah, that's frowned down. Well, that's why us mystery writers are looked down upon, right?
Yeah.
Because what are we writing? We're just writing dribble, right? We're not writing literature. And then of course we've got the partner who he's not on the scene as much, but when Stephen points out that they're running guns, that's what he was doing, that Uncle Nathaniel said,
Mhm.
no, that's wrong. That was kind of a shocking
Mhm.
discovery to find out. So
I thought he might be embezzling or something.
yeah,
It didn't occur to me that he would be doing something like that.
exactly. That was, well, it's kind of interesting to know that, like back in, wait, when was it? 1941, when this was written, the
Yes.
upper
For him.
classes were making money selling guns to,
Never
countries
stopped.
overseas. We are,
Apparently,
yeah, we armed all these countries that now we're being forced to try and intervene and stop what they're doing. Like, oh my God, who thought that this would happen, right? Who thought we would be drawn into this? Oh, well, we don't want to go there. And then what about Mrs. Dean, Valerie's mother, when she
Oh, I mean, I laughed a lot with her.
well, I was
I
wondering if
laughed a
there'd
lot.
be another murder and she could be it.
well, it was clear that she you understood why Valerie was the way she was, right?
Yes, of
Yeah.
But
course.
I thought the best part was when, like after they disengage, because she thinks Stephen's going to get arrested. They break the engagement, it's all for the best, la la la. And then when he doesn't get arrested, when he's cleared of the murder, she can't undo it. No, she can't figure out how to backpedal, because now she knows he's going to inherit everything, and her daughter now is out of the situation. So that was kind of she was an
Yeah.
interesting character there.
And I hated her, and I hated because she talked in third person. Mommy wants
Oh,
you to all this in third person. And I think there's a couple of instances that she talks I, but it's always mommy,
yeah,
always
you're
third
right.
person.
Yeah,
Why?
yeah, she was, and she enters the story like way after that, like the halfway mark, but she's still just as equally well drawn as all the other characters. You
Yes.
don't forget her, and she was a very specific type of woman who was only, I mean, she was motivated by getting the best husband for her daughters.
Yeah. And
And
she
that,
flirts. She flirts
oh
with,
yeah,
yeah, she flirts. It doesn't matter if
yeah,
this one has a fiance or a boyfriend or not. She's avid. She has
yeah,
this hunger for being there. And I
right.
think she enjoys every second that she's in the wow.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, and when Maud decides she's going to church, she doesn't care about being the hostess of this party. This had nothing to do with her. Yeah, Mrs. Dean is quite happy to step in and
Mhm.
take care of she wasn't a bit upset about that. She was okay.
Mhm.
Now we have some downstairs characters that I think is
Oh,
where
yeah.
you really learn a lot about the class structure in
Yes.
England, right?
Yes.
So you've got
Yes.
this story,
Yeah.
the butler, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he's quite full of himself, right? And his station, and you know, uh, uh when Stephen kind of catches him though, like eavesdropping, and he says, "What a lot you'll have to regale them with in the servants' hall, won't you?" said Stephen amiably. And Sturry, comes back with, "Was never one to gossip, sir, such being beneath me." "Being beneath me," replied Sturry in a grand and despising way. And then when Joseph tries to draw him into the family circle, when they're trying to figure out, like, I think they're waiting for the police to come. Sturry would not be so drawn. He stood immovable, despising people who did not know their places, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even though he's not part of the gentry, he is equally as snob. He knows his place,
Mm-hmm.
and anybody else, needs to stay in theirs. Then there's the scene, and that's when I thought of you, Cindy, and the play you're writing, right? Because Slurry's showing the inspector what he calls an incidental table. And when he entered he said when he had entered the drawing room before dinner to make sure that James the footman had set it to rights. No cigarette case had been on the table, because the cigarette case is a clue in this. But he had to make sure that James the footman had set it to right, like, emptied the cigarettes and whatnot. And then even when he's talking to Major Bolton, filling in Inspector, or when Major Bolton is filling in Inspector Hemingway in, he says about Nathaniel, "I'm not saying he was a self-made man. Perfectly respectable family and all that." Interesting that being a self-made man was not a good thing in England.
Doesn't count.
No.
Yeah, they looked.
No, that's new money, right?
Yeah.
You want
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
that
It meant
down
nothing.
upon. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that was an interesting, when I thought, oh God, this is exactly the opposite of America, where the self-made man is the hero.
Well, in a way, but not always.
Well, yeah, there's all money in this country too.
Yeah, and that's why some people are still looked down on in spite of everything they do to try to be at the top.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to move into the social circles, the social register. It's true. Now let's talk a little bit about the detectives and Scotland Yard. What do you think about the attitude towards the policemen by these members of the gentry?
Well, they're lesser people.
Absolutely.
They're definitely lesser people. And
I mean,
Well,
deserve
they're working people. So the
Mhm.
gentry, I mean, I haven't read it, but yeah, the gentry would not be
oh yeah, that, well, first
very
thing,
standard.
the one statement said that the gentry are utterly dismissive of servants, and I think they regard the police in the same way. Okay. And then so Paula, when she's questioned, she had gone up to her uncle's room and knocked on the door. And the day before, when the police are questioning him, questioning everybody, she doesn't bother to mention that. So then the detective finds out that she did, because I think one of the servants saw her at the door.
Yeah.
And then Paula, when the detective says she didn't tell him about that, she says, "No, because I could see from the look on you, the look of you, what sort of fool you'd make of yourself if I told you that." It's like, talk to a policeman that way, like, okay, yeah. But I was thinking of George Santos when she said that, because it's kind of like, well, of course I lied. They wouldn't believe me if I told the truth. And that's exactly the same thing. No, she said she didn't tell him because he'd look, yeah.
It's like they don't take the police seriously at all.
No.
Okay.
And like what they deem necessary to tell them.
Mhm.
Is just what
Yeah.
they, like they're not going to tell them anything that they think is
Correct.
they don't need to know. What do you think about Inspector Hemingway? Is he a likable character?
Yes, I thought so, but not a strong personality that showed, not like some of them.
Yeah, he's no Hercule Poirot, right? He's
No.
not a main character in here. And what do you think of the way that he treats his sergeant?
Oh, again, like if he was his servant, and the things
Yeah.
he
And
said
yet, but
to
he liked
him
him. He
all the
really was not
time.
harsh on him at all. I think it was their way of bantering.
But he
You know,
insults him.
I
Yeah.
thought that too at first, Ellis. But then here's the passage that made me think twice about that. So he said, when you get a bunch of suspects, this is Hemingway talking. When you get a bunch of suspects, only one of whom has the foresight to provide himself with an alibi, you want to keep a very sure eye on that one. I admit I didn't, but that was very likely because you distracted me. The sergeant swallowed something in his throat. Very likely, he agreed bitterly.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, yeah, because like he's blaming the sergeant. I thought the banter at first was exactly that, but there was a point at which I thought, I don't like the way he's talking to this guy. I don't
Mhm.
know.
And I remember two instances where he calls him like an empty head or whatever it was, and I thought, mm.
Yeah, he seems to be very yeah, he seems to.
Does he get more out of the sergeant if he insults him? Like, did he do
No,
it
this
purposely
sergeant seems.
to get the sergeant to be thinking a little more clearly about something, or
I think he's trying to get him to think more clearly.
Yeah,
To
there,
yeah,
look
it
at
wouldn't work for
more than
me
the
if they
surface.
put me down, but maybe he's using some sort of reverse psychology or something. I don't
but
know. I haven't read it.
the sergeant is rather diligent. Like when he sends him out to the garbage heap to retrieve things, he goes and does whatever he has to, and he does show a little bit of initiative. But it
Mhm.
seems to me like if I was working for a guy like this, I would be afraid to show any initiative. I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, I had at first thought it was funny. It was a bantering relationship, but there were moments when I thought it wasn't. But I loved, of course, her dialogue, which really it can be so funny. So very early on, you've got this interchange between Valerie and Stephen, and she says, "You are a low hound, Stephen. Do you love me?" "Yes, damn you." "Well, it doesn't sound as though you did. I'm pretty, aren't I?" "Yes, my little bonehead, you're lovely. Aphrodite and Helen rolled into one. Stop dribbling." "Oh, I can't think why I ever fell for you, darling. I think you're foul."
Well, that was a
Page
relationship.
9. You really can't see that there's any future for these two, right? But
Mhm.
that interchange just made me laugh. I thought, oh my God, these characters are really, really funny.
Yeah, I think it was obvious that he'd been somehow roped into it or trapped into it.
I
They
never
did not
found it was,
care.
yeah,
Why? Or why in the first place?
yes. The mother, there were indications several times that the mother
Yeah, manage of the whole.
trapped him or finagled him into doing this,
Yeah.
but you never knew what she had on him or how she did that. That was never fully explained. But yeah, I wasn't at all happy when unhappy when they broke up, when that was over. But to be honest with you, I didn't really expect that he was going to declare his love for Matilda because they were cousins. But in those families,
Yeah, back
they
then.
yeah,
Mhm.
they kind of would marry their cousins.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
back to the murder itself. Like I said, it doesn't occur until page 10, but there's a lot of foreshadowing, right? Up
Yeah.
until up until there. I mean, Stephen, you are an unpleasant to the poor silly young ass. I shall have a shot at murdering you.
Yes, yes.
You know, Nathaniel says, yes, you'd be glad to see me laid underground. I know that.
Yeah, there's the more instances like
Right.
that.
And then he says to Paula, I thought that this Nathaniel, I thought that was just what you did want, 2,000 pounds of my money and ready to murder me to get it.
Mm.
And then Matilda, as Joseph talks to her through the door, it's funny. She says he returned to his Victorian ballad, alternately humming and singing it until Matilda began to nourish thoughts of homicide. She's thinking of killing Joseph, yes, which I think everybody did at some but it's interesting how different this novel is from modern novels, right? I mean, in terms of when the murder occurs, the
I have
repetition.
a question about that.
Yeah.
If it's a closed door murder, and I'm probably not well read in this, but I would think that the idea of the body not dropping on page 1 is necessary in a closed door murder, because part of the suspense, just kind of thinking this through, would be who's gonna get killed, and like establishing that Christmas party, who's there, who's gonna get killed, and then who did it. I can see that the plot would be, even in a more modern closed door mystery, the body has to drop a little later.
Yeah.
And Sally, you wrote one of those, I think, when you wrote your Holly and Ivy that took place in Italy. And do you remember they went to Italy?
Oh, yeah.
And some of the suspense was, I think it was, I won't say because y'all may not have read it, but who here in this family group is going to
Yeah, is going to get murdered.
And so it happened later in the book then, because that was kind of a closed door mystery right there.
Well, the last book, this last one that I just published, The Mystery of the Bogus Bloom, that if you remember correctly, as I was providing the early chapters, you were going, well, when's the body gonna?
Yeah, that's true.
So
I did
in this
that,
book, I had the murder take place quite a ways in, because the mystery is more about, you know, like this science project that's been so yeah, you know, but I kind of like that the ability, when I read, even I like to get this full view of the characters. I like to see that. And you know, like, why would it, who would I like to see murder? Or, you know, you kind of figure out who's going to get murdered. You kind of figure out, based on the things Nathaniel says, that he's going to be the murder victim, right? Because he says it, that, oh, y'all want to murder me for my money. You like to see me in my grave. So there's that foreshadowing throughout. But then the locked door mystery, then that's what carries you through to the end. The trying to figure out the murder weapon.
And
Where
how
was the murder
somebody
weapon?
could
I
have
thought that was
gotten in the
clever.
room.
Right. And the locked room. It was a really it was really good. Another thing is, like, many points of view. She jumps from one person's head to another.
But
Again,
you're never in doubt where you are.
no, you're perfectly clear at all times who's thinking, who's talking, whose point of view it's coming from. So I just love this.
I think mystery is the only genre that I'm aware of that's so strict on point of view. Romance writers are not. A lot of literary books, well, I shouldn't say a lot, the ones I've read,
Yeah.
they're not confined to one. A lot of them are one at a scene.
What do you think that is? What do you think that is?
I don't know. It just got started in, just like now it's becoming popular to write in present tense. And everybody
I hate it.
jumping.
I know.
I hate it too. it distracts me from the story.
Mhm.
Uh,
I agree, Ellis. It's kind of a gimmick, I think. It's just
I
I
think
don't know.
so. It's just a trend, and
Yeah.
everybody wants to be on it.
I just read I just read a book that was written in present tense, and I just hated every minute of it. I just yeah, there's something annoying about reading it. I don't
And
know.
those mysteries, they start with the end. They, you know, who killed who, how, why. And with this information, there's like a preface, and then chapter one starts. I'm like, okay, we'll see.
But getting back to the question about point of view, I wonder if Ellis, you said it's with mysteries, it's very strict. And maybe it's the nature of the game. A mystery, you have to pay attention to the point of view because you can't give away the murderer.
Well, I've read a number of them that are not strictly one point of view or first person,
Yeah.
but it doesn't. For me, it's more natural. But that's a lot of people like it, but I don't. I think it just got to be so. Maybe when mystery
Too
was
rigid.
trying to define itself as something unique or special, I don't know how it got so big, like this point of view stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one paragraph that it hit me because it was like Paula, seated beside Nathaniel, was talking to him about Royden's play, forgetting to eat her dinner in her earnestness, annoying him by gesticulating with her thin, nervous hands, insisting on his attending to her, even though he didn't want to. Oh, wait, there's got to be more of this here. Even though he didn't want to, wasn't interested. Valerie on his right was bored. Now she's telling you, she's not showing you, oh, Valerie yawned. Valerie was bored. And taking no pains to hide it. She had pretended at first to be deeply interested, saying, "My dear, how marvelous. Do tell me about your part. I shall adore coming to see you in it." But Paula didn't want to capture Valerie's interest. She brushed her aside with that careless contempt which made her look suddenly like Stephen. So Valerie sighed, patted her sleek curls into position, and despised Paula for wearing a dress which didn't suit her and for combing her hair so casually off her face. So it's like, well, maybe is that all in Paula's or
it's omniscient, really.
Yeah, that's omniscient, I would say.
Omniscient, right? And but there's nothing confusing when you read it. It's perfectly clear. So
and it does not bother me at all when it's done well.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. But yeah, I enjoyed reading this so much. I just it was.
I did too.
But it was a little long. It was a little repetitious.
Yes.
I'll give you that. But otherwise, I just yeah. Well, here's something interesting from the I'll tell you from the Agatha Christie program. I don't know whether this was the murder, the mystery at Styles, the mysterious something at Styles, which was, I think, her first
affair at Styles.
The mysterious affair at Styles, or whether it was the second one, the murder of Roger Ackroyd.
Oh.
But Hercule Poirot is her inspector. And in the first draft, she had Poirot in court doing his kind of like, like in Matlock, he's wrapping up and like, telling everybody, and he's just, he's not asking it's like nothing realistic about that. He's not asking anybody a question. He's just like giving his account of what happened. Okay. So that's what Poirot does. But she had Poirot doing this in the courtroom. And the publisher said to her, listen, you this would never take place in a court of law.
No.
And that's when she had it take place in the drawing room, when at the end of the book, they call it the drawing room denouement, right? He brings all the suspects in, and then he goes through, and you that's how you come to who the murderer is. And she created that. She was
Wow.
the first one to do that. And she did it because, you know, that's kind of like me when I was doing things in my first book that the police would never do. And everybody goes, Sally, you can't do this. Police would never do that. And so, you know, I had to get a little better at that sort of thing. But it was the same thing. She had him doing this in court. In reality, that would never occur. And even in a mystery book, they weren't going to publish it if that's how she wrote it. And that, like they said, she was smart enough to change it and come up with a way to do it. And
What did you call it? The drawing room?
The drawing room denouement. The denouement is like the unveiling, the revealing.
I understand what you mean, but I've never heard that phrase.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And I thought, you know, it really is a staple. I don't know if any of you watch Death in Paradise on PBS.
They do it, yeah.
Yes, they do.
Every episode ends like that. They bring all the suspects together, and then they go through and come up with the. But it's always on a beach setting, right? Like in a hotel with the Caribbean Sea behind you. So that's kind of interesting. But it was kind of exciting to learn that fact. The other thing they showed, like in episode 2, was that she had a contract to write a book of 75,000 words. And they showed her notebook where she had, like, every day how many words she wrote. And, you know, I do that. I do that. I by every chapter, I write how many words I'm at to have it, you know, like to make me realize like I'm halfway through, and you know, like I've only got 30,000 words, and I'm, you know, like I'm ready to end the book, right? So I thought that was kind of interesting to realize that I'm doing something that my one of my hero writers does. So that was kind of fun. So anybody have any parting comments on this book and on Georgette Heyer?
Well, I think read her other mysteries. No Wind of Blame and Envious Casca, which has another name now, I think.
Okay.
They renamed it.
Are these also Inspector Hemingway?
Some of them are.
Okay. All right.
I can't remember which or which.
I'm looking forward to I've read a couple of her, I guess they're Regency romances, which I don't usually read romance, but I like her.
Yeah.
So I've never read her mysteries. So thank you for turning me on to these.
They're not as many.
And I read Sylvester, which is a really interesting book because the woman is a writer. The character who the main character is a woman who's a writer, and I read that and I really enjoyed that. And that's one of the romances, not a mystery. But anyway, just so y'all know, next month starts a new quarter. Our first book is Killers of the Flower Moon, which is a movie at this point. We're going to go from cozy land into real serious land here.
Yeah, I think that's supposed to be.
Oh, I sent you an email.
Yes.
The second book is on sale for $1.99 on Kindle today.
Right. And I sent an email out to everybody who registered already for next month.
Yes, you did.
Letting them know that they could get that book really cheaply if they read on Kindle. So I'm looking forward to that. Peg Roach, who was with us last month and couldn't make it this month, will be our moderator. So I'm looking forward to that because each one of these books has Native American characters in it. And Winter Counts I've read before, and it is really very good. It's a great book. So
Ellis, which book is on sale now? I'm sorry, what's the name of it?
Winter Counts.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, yeah, another email will be coming out. Reminders will go out the day before, as always. I've gotten pretty good about that. So I wish you all happy holidays and hope that your family,
Likewise.
I hope that your family get-togethers do not resemble the Harryard families.
Me too. Me too.
Oh,
And I look forward to seeing you all in the new year.
Thank you,
You
Sally.
too.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Enjoy.
Happy
Bye-bye.
holidays.
Happy holidays. Bye-bye.
Yes. Hope you all have fun, whatever it is.